Hi, you're watching Vantage Point, and today, just like the discussions in the past, I would like to revisit the crisis in the Middle East or West Asia, looking at Palestine and Israel conflict. But however, today I'm very glad because I have a very, very important person here. He is Professor Jeff Halper. Thank you so much for making time to be on this show.
Thank you.
Jeff is he co-founded actually the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, or ICAHD, and they work from within Israel.
That's right.
To look at, we've all heard about the illegal settlement, and I have to put the quote unquote because depending on which international news agency you look at,
that's right.
it's legal, some say it's legal, but from our standpoint, from Malaysia, who have close ties with the Palestinian, we do wonder how come houses can be built on Palestinian land when they have so little land left as compared to 1948. But I'm not going to talk about the political side tonight. I'm just going to go to Jeff and help. Can you please help educate us from the crisis of Palestine, Israel, but looking at the housing demolition and the settlements?
Well, you know, we're an Israeli peace and human rights organization that's dedicated to ending the Israeli occupation. And in fact, to achieve a just peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Whatever that is, a two-state solution, although today I think most of us have come to the conclusion that that's gone, or a one-state solution in which Israel is transformed into a state of all its people, is Palestinians and Israelis together. But Israel has had this occupation for the last almost 50 years, since 1967, and it gets stronger and stronger, and the Palestinians become ever more oppressed, and peace cannot emerge in that way. But occupation is a very abstract, big term for people. So in order to help people understand what that means, occupation, what Israel is doing, why Israel is keeping the occupation, how does it work, the occupation, and how does it affect Palestinians, we focused on the issue of house demolitions. In other words, Israel has demolished 28,000 Palestinian homes in the occupied territory since 1967. So by looking at how house demolitions are done and why they're done, we can really understand better why Israel wants to keep the occupation and how. For example, Israel always says, everything we do is for our self-defense. These are terrorists. It's all security. Well, there's no security reason given for demolishing Palestinian homes. It's because Israel doesn't give them building permits. Israel refuses to allow Palestinians to build new homes. And this is 50 years now. So that all of a sudden it turns out that, wait a minute, it's not security. Something else is going on that's driving Israeli policy that is not security. And it's a proactive claim to the country. So the house demolition issue really gives us a chance to expose Israel's real intentions of never ever giving up the occupation.
I've heard the figure of 500,000 houses being built over the house demolished. Which area exactly we're talking about? Because it's being said that it's encroaching into Gaza, it's encroaching into the West Bank, and even into East Jerusalem, for example. So if you can paint the picture of after 1967, 68, and also until now, because it's understandable if it's within the borders of before 67, but even beyond the land that they don't control.
That's right. Well, we would say it's not understandable anywhere. But, you know, one of the reasons that we're looking at a one-state solution, we're saying the problem isn't 1967. It's really the whole country, because house demolitions gets to the essence of the conflict. If you deny someone a home, human beings can't live without a home. And then collectively, you say, this entire people can't have a homeland. The message is, get out. You have no place in this country. And so in a sense, the house demolition issue is the essence of the conflict in which one people is trying to drive the other people out. And therefore, house demolitions happen not only in the occupied territories, They happen also inside Israel.
Okay.
Last year, the Israeli government demolished more homes of Israeli citizens than it did in the occupied territories, and those citizens are all Arabs, either Palestinians or Bedouins. So the whole policy since 1948 of demolishing homes and trying to get the Palestinians out of the country, or at least to confine them to little pockets of the country, continues to go on. And from that point of view, the situation of Palestinians who are citizens of Israel is no different from Palestinians in the occupied territories.
There's also the issues of the walls being built.
That's right.
And I've listened to Palestinians who have been here in this studio, and they have shared how it's very, very tough to make a living because they have to go to checkpoints.
That's right.
And some villages are totally geographically cut off from the natural ways that they can go and do their living, for example. So how do you look at this? Because it's also a strategic move to not just demolish, but to really, really isolate away the pockets of community from civilization.
That's right. The Palestinians have been isolated from the rest of the world, from each other. I mean, Palestinians in the West Bank cannot visit other Palestinians, their relatives, inside Israel. They're not allowed to go inside Israel or Jerusalem. Palestinians from the West Bank can't visit their relatives in Gaza. People in Gaza can't go into Israel. You see, so it's all fragmented like that. And in fact, the Palestinians have been locked into little areas of the West Bank that are called areas A and B. I won't get into that whole crazy system, but you fragment the Palestinian land, you isolate the Palestinian populations, and in the end, where Israel is going is towards a situation worse than apartheid. Apartheid in South Africa was at least the black Africans would have a Bantustan.
Yes.
A crazy little, not a real country, but
an area where they can call their own.
It was called Transkei, and there was one called Ciskei, and there were other names. Israel says, we're going to do something worse than apartheid. We're going to, the word that we use is to warehouse Palestinians, like in a prison. Prisoners are warehoused. You don't see them. They're locked away. That's where they're going to stay. They're fed by the government. They're inmates. Israel sees the Palestinians as inmates in these little prison cells all through the country, inside Israel, in the occupied territories. And that's it. There'll never be a Palestinian state. There'll never be negotiations. All these so-called negotiations with Kerry today are just meaningless.
Okay, I have to go for the first break, Jeff, but once we are back, so what hope is there? You know, how can the world move forward in the 21st century where human rights is being advocated everywhere, including in trade negotiation or whatever else, but we can allow the communities of the world cannot just sit there and see this happening. I believe there must be some ways that we can do this. I believe you and your friends and your colleagues in the ICAHD also must be looking towards the future for this. So let's discuss that after this short break. Hi, you're still watching Vantage Point, and you might still remember a lot of discussions we had on this show about Rachel Corrie, this very, very bright and spirited young girl who went there into the thick of the Israeli-Palestine conflict, stood in front of a bulldozer and paid with her life just to stop Palestinian homes from being demolished. And Malaysia has given her tribute. There's even a ship called Rachel Corrie, ship that was supposed to go and give help to Gaza, named after her. And she inspired a lot of people, even here in this country. However, I'm going to bring back to that issue where houses are being demolished, walls are being built, Palestinians are being turned into pockets of establishments, and you have come up with a new term for me, at least, warehousing of the Palestinian, more like concentration camps or whatever else. So what hope is there? I've spoken to the Palestinians that have come my way here, and they're very, very pessimistic about the future.
Look, the problem is that the Israeli government will not end the conflict. The Israeli government built billions of dollars of settlements and highways and walls in the occupied territories in order to keep them, not in order to create a Palestinian state. The Israeli public doesn't care. The Israeli public is living a very good life. The economy is doing well. There haven't been any attacks for years. They feel very safe. So they're not going to rise up and overthrow the occupation. We don't even think about the occupation in Israel. Okay. So the problem then is, how do we get the international community to resolve this conflict? There has to be outside forces, like in the anti-apartheid movement. Now, the problem we have is that governments are supposed to do that. But the governments of the world manage conflicts. They don't resolve them. I mean, the Malaysian government is very good on this issue in that it does speak out for the Palestinians. Most governments don't. And most governments, including your neighbor Singapore, have very close relations with Israel. They don't care if there's an occupation. They don't care about violations of human rights, international law. So the way out, the way that our strategy is to mobilize civil society. Mobilize the people. That's why I'm here. So I spoke to university students yesterday. I'm speaking to the Council of Churches tonight. I speak with trade unions, with political groups, human rights organizations, religious groups. In other words, civil society, everybody in civil society that cares, because the people care about human rights and international law more than the governments do. Yeah. And so our strategy is, and I think we're succeeding, to mobilize people all over the world. I mean, I think the Palestinian issue has become an issue, a global issue, at the scale of the anti-apartheid struggle. All over the world, people are talking about the Palestinians. And as that changes from below, and there's pressures from below on governments, they'll slowly begin to change their policies. For example, the EU, just a few weeks ago, sanctioned Israel and said you will not get any investments or research funds or anything from the EU for any university or business or bank or company that has any involvement in the occupied territory. Which is, I mean, Israel could lose $800 million like that. So I think the governments are beginning to respond slowly to the people saying we have to end this occupation and give the Palestinians their rights.
If you were to raise civil society's consciousness, then information is very crucial. However, we do know that the pervasiveness of the 21st century information and communication technology has let things flow not only one way or two ways, but many ways.
That's right.
And we do know that Israel is not just sitting there passively. They're very active on the internet, for example. I know for sure that during Operation Cast Lead, the students and lecturers, academics from University of Herzliya were going online on Twitter and Facebook and justifying why they must go and raid Gaza. And I had a live phone interview directly to a professor in University of Herzliya, and he was making a point that, look, he cannot afford for his 8-year-old granddaughter going to school suddenly be torn to pieces because an Al-Qassam rocket. But when I asked about disproportionate retaliation, how many rockets and how many people have died compared to one military operation over 2 weeks that killed 1,000 over.
That's right.
But this is the imbalance of information that you have out there. So how do we get past this? Because lobbyists, they are not only strong in Washington, but they're also strong on the internet.
That's right. Look, I approach this as an anthropologist. I'm a professor of anthropology. And we approach the world from the ground up. You know, if you look at the Holocaust that happened in Europe, 6 million people died. People don't grasp that. But there's the one story of Anna Frank, this girl in Holland. And that's become kind of the symbol. People can relate to a girl. So what we do, that's why we took the issue of house demolitions. There's a family, a normal Palestinian family, owns some land, wants to build a modest house. No security issue, no terrorism, no politics. They just want a home. And here they have to build a home without a building permit because Israel won't give them a permit. And now here's the family, the mother, the father, 6 kids. Here come the bulldozers. Here are the soldiers. The father's getting beaten up. The house is demolished. Just telling that story cuts through all the propaganda that Israel could possibly muster. Here's one family, and again, I ask the question, why are they demolishing this family's home? It's not for security. And if we can tell, we let the families tell the stories. We show the pictures. We bring people into that human life. And one family can be a much more effective answer to all of Israel's propaganda than if I started to get into political analysis and this and that. I just show that family and people understand.
Okay. Jeff, I have to go for the last commercial break, but once we are back, I've traveled not to many countries, but to a few countries in my career. And I do have to meet, whether it's in the media field or others, people from Israel. And they're very clever and they're very forward-thinking.
Right.
And we do engage socially after discussion and stuff to sometimes have a friendly debate on this. However, we do know that in Israel, the school system has all been dragged into this conflict.
That's right.
What's being taught in school is very different from what's the reality out there. So how do you look for people outside Israel to understand why majority or a lot of Israelis, they look at the Palestinian in a very, very biased way. And this is systematic. So when they go out, how do they talk to civil society? Because they'll be entrenched in one particular thinking, for example. So should we engage them more and give hope for the debate to happen? Slowly but surely, we can pressurize the economic side of things so that the social side, political side can change. What hope is there for that? And maybe I want to go back and, if we have time to end, maybe we Malaysians have not really seen the suffering for a Palestinian family once the house is turned into rubble. Where do they go?
Yes.
Do they have a special area where they can go? Do they have help? Or what is it for them? That after this short break. Thank you for still watching Vantage Point, and imagine if you in the house, then there's a commotion outside. Your father went out of the house and suddenly he gets beaten up and he fell to the ground. And then a few bulldozers came in and they just ran over your house and that's it. Where do you go? That question I will ask Jeff later to relate your own experiences in witnessing that. But before that, it's a systematic indoctrination of the people of Israel. But now it's a globalized world. We do meet Israelis either physically outside somewhere in Europe, America, or anywhere else, or even online. So how do we, try to empathize with their point of view? Because if there's no discourse, then there's no exchange of information and trying to convince of reality out there.
Well, Israel's a very interesting case study in how you indoctrinate a population in an open society. Israel's an open society. You have critical newspapers like Haaretz. You have television. You have 100 television stations. You have internet. You have cable. Last year, 40% of the Israeli public went abroad. You have universities and libraries. It's open. You can get any information you want. And yet, 93% of Israeli Jews supported the invasion of Gaza in 2008. Now, in any society, when 93% of the people agree on something strange is happening. It's like in the Soviet Union when they used to have a 93% vote. So something, and there's two things happening. One is Israelis have been taught by their governments, and it's true in schools, in youth movements, in the political parties, in the media, that the Arabs, because we don't use the word Palestinians, because to say Palestinian gives too much recognition to another people that we don't want to recognize. So we talk about Arabs. The Arabs are our permanent enemies. There'll never be peace. So already Israelis say, well, I'm not going to think about peace because it's impossible because the Arabs will always attack us. And second of all, Israel has insulated its population from the conflict. We have a joke on the left in Israel that that the occupation is further away than Thailand. Because for Israelis, you can go to Thailand, you can buy a ticket. There's a lot of Israelis that go there for a lot of reasons. It's a real place. The West Bank and Gaza for Israelis, they don't have a map of it. They don't know where it is. It's a blank, dangerous place where they would be afraid to go. They have no interest in going. So it's like the Palestinians don't even exist. They exist not in a real place. So in many ways for Israelis, when they hear about house demolitions in the West Bank or military operations, it's as if it's happening in Thailand or Haiti or somewhere far away. It's not happening. It's outside of their experience. It's hard to convey to people that in West Jerusalem, you can have the downtown West Jerusalem, which is as peaceful and quiet as downtown KL, and 100 meters away in East Jerusalem, you've got an occupation and an army and house demolitions, and the people of West Jerusalem don't feel it, don't care, it doesn't affect their lives. So you can create a condition where people say we're normal, and they're just attacking us. You depoliticize. You sanitize the situation. So Israelis don't see the politics. They don't see the house demolitions. They don't see the occupation. They don't see the Palestinian suffering. And all they see is that they're being attacked. Because we call resistance terrorism. So we delegitimize resistance. And if you put all that together, Israelis say we're the victims, not the Palestinians. So the whole thing gets turned around like that. Governments and media are able to do that.
Yeah, agree. So what happens? Because there's a lot of Israeli Palestinians too, Israeli Arabs. So they do get to see, the Israelis do get to see this other side of the
There's
story.
very little contact between Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs. They don't go to the same schools usually. They don't work in the same places. The Palestinian citizens of Israel live in separate neighborhoods, separate cities. There isn't very much interaction.
So what happens to in a Palestinian home once it's being demolished?
Right.
Where would the family go to?
Right. So the Israelis say we're not responsible. We don't care. You know, the way the Israelis, if you say, but they're suffering from the wall, they're suffering from house demolitions, they're suffering from poverty, the Palestinians, don't you care? You're the occupying power. You should be, you Israelis are responsible. The answer is, it's not our problem. They brought it on themselves. We wanted peace as Israel, and they did an intifada, they did terrorism. You see, we blamed the victim. And once you blame the victim, then you're free. You're home free. Yeah. It's not our problem. So when houses are demolished, we don't care where they go. So what happens is families end up, you know, and you have 5, 6, 7 kids, you end up either moving into the home of your parents, the husband's parents, or one of the husband's brothers' families, and they're living in inadequate conditions. So you create terrible conditions of overcrowdedness. There's family tensions because now you've got too many people living together. It's really a terrible, terrible thing, a house demolition.
Jeff, we have 30 seconds left. I would like to end with maybe some hope for the future. If the so-called Arab Spring has managed to change systems in Egypt, for example, what's to stop the same movement and uprising to march towards the occupied territories and change things?
Israel's too strong. I mean, there have been intifadas. The Palestinians have risen up, but they've been brutally suppressed. I think the only hope is if the peoples of the world are in solidarity with the Palestinians, they pressure their governments to really do something, and I think the Palestinians have the support of the peoples, and that in the end is going to force Israel sooner rather than later to end the occupation.
It's rather one-state solution rather than two-state.
I believe the one-state solution is the only thing that Israel has left us with.
Okay, thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you
for all you and your colleagues there in the ICAHD is doing. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks to you for watching. You can send your own views to astroawani.com or go to our iOS and Android app. Astroawani is there. Thank you, and I'll see you in another episode of Vantage Point very, very soon. Goodbye.